Hello all, and welcome back to a new episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And each season, we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now, we are covering the iconic show, The Sopranos, and today we're on episode 4, titled Meadowlands from season 1. So if you haven't watched this episode yet, go watch it, come back, listen to the rest of our review and conversation. This is your spoiler alert. All right, Sarah, kick us off with a summary for episode 4.
Jen, this is a fascinating choice of a summary because it gives so much away. Like the big thing that happens in this episode, it gives it away in the first 3 words. Here we go.
No! I hate when they do that.
Right? Get ready to be upset. I was upset when I read this morning. With Jackie gone, Tony diverts a mob civil war by crowning Uncle Junior boss, even as Christopher demands vengeance and AJ learns the weight of his father's reputation.
With Jackie gone.
Episode.
You might as well just say Jackie dies. Period.
Right.
The thing is, it gives away Jackie's death, which
yeah.
But it also gives away that there is no war and that actually chooses to let Junior take it, which is such an interesting part of this whole episode. It's like, what will Tony do? Is he gonna do this war or not?
Yeah.
I hate when they do that.
Right? It's just a terrible summary. So boo whoever wrote that. Not good.
Yeah. Do better.
This is not how we do summaries of episodes.
They need to learn from the bear.
Yes.
Because the bear has some good ones. The bear's episode summaries are like, marriage, a wedding, period.
Yes.
You know, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Tensions simmer. It's just something really, really just vague.
The real test is your episode summary needs to also be a candidate for your episode title. That's honestly, when you're doing it right.
Yes.
Okay, well, what is your episode title for episode 4?
My title is Casual Violence.
Yeah. Yep. Lots of that in this world.
Yes.
Nothing to see here, everybody. My episode title is Lightning Rod.
Ah, yes. Oh, it's so good.
I loved it.
I'm so excited.
Okay, well, let's dive in. I would say an interesting, juicy episode. It's The Sopranos continuing to deliver. What are your thoughts on episode 4?
Yeah. There's so much that happens in this episode, which is probably what we're going to say for every single episode.
Yeah.
But this is, in line with that. That theme is holding strong. I think obviously we already touched on Jackie's death. I love how they did that. It's so good. It's so smart the way that Tony finds out and just the aftermath of all of that. Brilliant. And then like we just talked about, handing everything over to Junior, fascinating, setting up some really, really interesting stuff to come. And just this like deepening of Tony's orbit and his family. We spend a lot of time with AJ in this episode, which I found surprising. I wasn't particularly interested in those bits, but I love how this show is taking us into each of these family members, because I feel like in I think it's the second episode we spend a lot more time with Carmela. In the third episode we spend a lot more time with Meadow. And in this episode we spend a lot more time with AJ. So just reiterating that point that we've already talked about in previous episodes of we're seeking to understand and spend time with Tony, but by getting to know him, we're also getting to know him and his family. And you can't really know Tony without getting to know his family.
Yeah.
And so I find that really interesting that the show is continuing down that trajectory of this isn't just about, this mob boss, but it's about everybody in his orbit, and particularly those who know him the best and are the closest to him. So I think this episode hits on a lot of the things that this show has already been setting up, and continues to kind of develop more, and like pulling on those threads in a really interesting way. So lots more is set up for some really cool confrontations. So I'm excited to see what happens next.
Mm-hmm. I love the arc that this episode goes on. Because obviously the death happens, things get set into motion, and there's this really great middle section of tension between Tony and Junior. And the first time they meet at the restaurant, and Junior leaves Tony with "come heavy next time." Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And then it's almost like the episode does a fake out, like we are like Chris, and we are gearing up for a showdown to play out over the next couple of episodes. And it kind of says, just kidding, just kidding. And I appreciate how we get to see Tony's strategic side a little bit more in this episode. For a lot of the previous few, we're seeing him run his ship, and he's clearly exerting power and violence. But we get to see his schemy side in this episode, and I loved it. So that scene at the end of the episode where he's sharing a little bit with his henchmen of like, no, it's more favorable for us to let Junior bask in this right now. He's going to take the hits. He's going to be the lightning rod. He's going to be the target, and we can sit pretty until there's a better time for us. And so kind of seeing the way that he's playing the long game and knowing when the moment is right for him to strike versus to kind of just do the dance and roll over for the sake of protecting his people now. And his time will come, and he knows that. So I loved seeing kind of the delayed gratification that and strategic thinking that Tony has in this episode of, it's not time. We don't need to do that. It's not worth it. It's not beneficial for us, but he's going to take what he can get out of the situation. So seeing him make that trade with Junior is really fascinating too.
Oh, it's so good. Because, and we talked about it in our last episode of how is this going to go down between Tony and Junior, and Tony seeming to be almost this like reluctant leader who doesn't want it. And I still think that that's part of it, is he has this reluctance, especially with all of his health issues and his mental health, where he is right now. Like, this would not be a good time for him personally to be a leader, even though he could do it. And so I love that there's this like emotional side of it, this vulnerable side of it, of Tony not wanting to step up, but there's also this really strategic side of it too. And it's like a win-win for Tony, for his personal reasons, but also for his crew, and setting up him and his crew for future success. And so it's just cool to see how those things have aligned for him in this moment. And I'm so excited for whatever is going to come next, because their little conversation at the funeral where they're all scheming and talking all these details, I was like, yes, I am here for whatever this is. More of this, please.
And it's such a nod to The Godfather too. Like, I think I'm constantly surprised at how much this show is just winking at us of like, we know what you love, okay? We know what you love. We know what captivates your imagination. And we'll give you a little bit of it. We'll give you the slow trip of it time and time again. And so there's so many moments like that over the course of the show, but especially, obviously, that whole funeral sequence is literally nearly similar shots being framed, and angles and placements of where Junior's sitting, that's up on the hill looking kind of a little bit down on everybody else, is the exact way that Michael is framed at the end of the guy. So all of that I thought was so funny to see. It's like this winking inside joke, kind of a satire too. Like, it's making fun of it a little bit as well. Which I thought was just really funny, the way that the show's kind of self-reflexive of its own genre, and kind of making fun of itself, but also giving you a little bit of what it knows that you want to.
Well, and the whole show, but this episode, there are so many references to The Godfather all
Yeah.
throughout. Like, I love that conversation that they have in the hospital about, Brendan being shot through the eye, and Polly says, we're referencing The Godfather, the eye is just how
Mowgli.
Francis framed the shot for the shock value. And just like we have like film criticism happening between all these mob guys because they're obsessed with The Godfather. It's just so good. It's so funny. Ugh, I love it.
Oh, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. And like every episode too, I thought this was just going to be the first few of like, we've got you in now and we're going to tell this story, but it's keeping up the bit. I think it's also an interesting way to bring in the contrast of this kind of like new, more modern generation of how the mafia is run. So you can clearly see that they're a lot more focused on making money and kind of positioning their power plays and less so around like the pride of it all, because traditionally Tony would duke it out with Junior because he wants to be at the top and he wants the fame and the glory and kind of the disrespect and kind of the shame of not of losing that standoff with Junior would have been seen as weakness, right? And so you see Christopher also like teeing that up and wanting to seek vengeance, and this is a pride thing. And I love that Tony's like, yo, let's just make some money, Like we don't need to do that whole bit. But in The Godfather, that's very much a part of it. Like Michael is seeking vengeance for his father, and it's about earning respect from the other families. And within this one, they're like, yeah, let's make a good deal, and that's all we need. So I think that's also fascinating in bringing in those things. It's fun, it's super cool and hilarious, but also showcases how different times are now as well.
And I think it's also interesting that there is that piece of it of needing respect, and we all know that Tony has the respect of his crew, the captains,
Yeah.
like he really is the guy and everybody knows it. And so he already has that. But even when he gives it to Junior and they embrace and he's like,
Oh my
I can't lose face. You got to give me everything that I want because I'm giving you this thing. So I love
yeah.
that even in that moment when Tony is giving it to Junior, Tony still has all the power and he knows it and
Yes.
he knows how to wield it to get what he wants to put him and his crew in a better position going forward. So it's
Yeah.
cool that like we're seeing that respect thing play out a little bit differently than we have in the past. So like it's familiar, but it's a different take on it, which just is fun
Mm-hmm.
and inventive.
Mm-hmm. And since we're talking about that scene, I loved that slow zoom in shot when they're embracing and you see Tony clutching Junior's head with his full hand. And it's really kind of terrifying because they have this nice agreement. They're laughing. They're like, oh, I love you. I love you. And when they embrace, I'm like, what is about to come out of Tony's mouth? It feels menacing. And just how strong that clutching of this old man's head that you see from behind. And you just see Tony like kind of like really aggressively holding Junior. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I wonder if that was a little bit of the power play from Tony as well of like, I'm going to give you this, but you best believe like I've got you in my hands and I'm going to demand what I want. And so I loved, and it's a super slow zoom in shot. I felt so tense in that sequence, and just the cinematography and the way that comes together, almost these emotional beats that switch up on each other so quickly. It's tense. They sit down. Tony gives him the glory and concedes. They have this little laughing moment. It feels like it diffuses, but there's still something else there too. And then it goes back to this nice chummy moment between the two of them. So kind of the way it flips back and forth from tones is really effective and almost shocking when he clutches this old man's head.
No, I was so nervous with that shot too, because that whole scene is set up with Tony getting out of his car and you see him with his gun.
Oh my
And
God,
we
yeah.
know that he's armed. And he also acknowledges it. Like, I came in heavy, but I don't want to use it.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing that I was thinking about in their embrace is this just
Oh,
like, are we just disarming everybody so that I can actually like take Junior out? Because he said come in heavy the next time. So I
yeah.
don't know, like, is Tony actually gonna do this? And when he's like gripping his head so like uh, scarily, I was like, oh no, is Tony about to execute Junior right here? I don't know. He
Mm,
clearly doesn't. But I love that there's so much tension all throughout that scene. And you said it like rises and diffuses throughout a few times,
yeah.
but it's still there, kind of like simmering at the bottom of the whole scene. Even in their happy, jokey moments, everything is not okay. There's something slightly off. So you're not quite sure what Tony is going to do. And is he going to blow the whole thing up? Or are we going to take this other path? So I love how tense that scene is. And I was nervous the whole time.
It was so juicy. Yes, we loved it. Uh, you're smiling at each other until someone whips out their gun, and you're like, "Wait, no one. This guy can't smile anymore because he is dead." Yeah, it was a great moment. And I think also what I love about Tony's decision by choosing to concede and let Junior have it, that he says to his men at the end in that conversation at the funeral, is he knows that everyone knows that Junior is just sitting in that position, but that he doesn't actually have the power. And so just the way that Tony understands kind of the public opinion, the talk of the town, the perceptions that are at play, and using that to his advantage, I think is also really cool, because he understands that he is perceived as the true head, and so he knows that everyone also sees Junior as just kind of this sitting guy in the position. And I love the cuts in between him saying all of this to Junior when people are coming up and paying their respects. And it really does feel like this pomp and circumstance that everyone's playing the game, but everyone also knows this is just for show and we know who's really calling the shots. And so Tony's ability to play with public perception to his advantage, with the crew, with the family, is really genius as well. So I love that we're getting to see some of Tony's strategic and kind of clever use of all of the cards at play here, for his advantage.
Because I feel like for the most part, this show has focused on Tony and like his emotions, his emotional intelligence, his mental health, and the way that he relates to others. It's been a
Yeah.
lot of like EQ kind of stuff
Yeah.
and his emotional intelligence and dealing with others and like being a middle manager and like all of those kind of like his social intelligence. And
Yeah.
now I feel like in that conversation, we're seeing, oh man, he can do the relational piece of it really well and he can understand relational dynamics, but also he has this really interesting strategic mind. And those two things paired together will take you
Oh,
very far in this world. So
yes.
I'm very curious to see, because we've seen these two sides of Tony now that both he's skilled in both in. So I'm just so curious to see, now that we know how strategic he is, what
Yeah.
else is he scheming up? What is next for him?
Yes, yes. No, I think that's said perfectly. And he's using everything he's perceived in the relational EQ realm and putting all those pieces together to know how to play his cards, and to use that as such valuable inputs, and play the long game and keep people close, keep them loyal, knowing when to be aggressive and when to just roll over. It's fascinating. Okay, some other big moments from this episode that we wanted to talk about.
I mean, we got to talk about Christopher too.
Yes, poor guy.
Poor guy. Oh my gosh. I I thought it was so smart to, where we see him for the first time in this episode leaving the hospital and he's so paranoid because he
Yeah,
doesn't know why he got beat up. And I'm watching this knowing that Brendan has also died. And I'm also assuming that Chris knows that Brendan has died, and that's fueling his paranoia. That's how I read that. At first, I was like, oh man, yeah, I would be paranoid too if I got beat up and my best friend was murdered. And that is not what happened. And so that moment when they go to Brendan's apartment and they find him, it's like, oh, this poor guy who has he got just beaten up, feeling awful, and then he goes and he finds his dead friend, and just the gut punch that is. So I love the way that was set up, because I made some incorrect assumptions because the show told me what was going on, but also watching Chris learn these things in real time, I thought was really, really smart.
And also him just trying to figure out, like, what is he supposed to do next? Like, he doesn't know what Tony knows. And so figuring out his next move, and he kind of takes the path of like, let me just avoid. And then when he sees Tony later, Tony's like, where you been? He's like, okay, I think I'm okay. But I think also him knowing that in the world of the mob, people might pretend to your face because they're scheming your death later. You know what I mean? And I think if I were Krista, I'd be like, Tony seems to be fine with me, but maybe he already knows and he's planting a whole scheme for me to die later, but he doesn't want me to know yet because I need to show up to the right place, And never being able to trust, never knowing when you've maybe set off someone or offended someone and they're coming for you. I think that was a fascinating way to see Christopher, who's this younger kid who hasn't like been steeped in this long enough to obviously react so strongly with the paranoia, but that helping inform why Tony's dealing with so much stress and panic attacks is because this is all of Tony's life. His entire life is paranoia. It's looking behind your back, waiting for someone to betray you, waiting, for someone close to you to like get a better offer from the other side and take it, and having to constantly be looking out behind your back. It's tiring. I'm tired just thinking about it.
Right? Like, man, life is stressful enough. I don't have to have like people actively wanting me to be murdered. Like, gosh, I don't think I'd be able to handle that. I wouldn't be handling that as well as Tony is handling that right now.
Hence his choice to be like, yeah, let Junior be the lightning rod. It's fine.
It makes sense.
We can be the target. Shield ourselves for a little while longer.
Well, and I love the other thing that's introduced in this episode is the feds. And obviously, when you're watching a mob movie or a mob show, you know that the government knows about them. And like we saw in a previous episode, they were watching TV about all of that and like the consequences, and Tony's mentioned Rico before. So we've heard little murmurings about the feds, but now we actually see them. And so I appreciate that those two things are also coinciding, of Tony giving it to Junior, and now we are seeing the feds. And so I would imagine that is going to continue to be a plot line that is explored. So once again, really smart for Tony to be able to like read the tea leaves and know, like, obviously Tony is on their radar at some level, but Tony doesn't need the full force and the full focus of the feds because he's got other stuff to handle. So I think that that's a really good pairing for Junior to be in the spotlight now, as we're now seeing the feds enter the picture a little bit more.
And it buys Tony time to just see how they move. He can take his time to observe. What do they got up their sleeve? How do things typically play out? What's the state of things right now before he's going to make a big move, which is really neat to see. So I'm sure we'll see more of the feds. It seems to be a common theme in the show, and kind of this third party dimension variable that can wreak chaos and manipulate people's loyalties to one way or another. That it's not just a binary standoff that might be happening or tensions that are happening, but there's actually this third dimension, which is always really fun to see. You'd mentioned earlier there's a lot of time spent with AJ, which I also thought was really interesting, because I'm like, we spent a lot of time with AJ. and that whole plot line. And I thought there was a really interesting parallel between AJ and his friend kind of having this warmth for each other and yet still having to fight. Like they're like, we're reminiscing on that time we did this together and when we were friends, but then we're foes. So we have to fight and we have to save face and earn respect from our peers. And it was a really interesting parallel to the way that Junior and Tony talk about each other. The amount of times Tony's like, but I love that guy. By the way, I love that guy. But like, we're on opposite ends. We have to fight. And so I thought that was an interesting kind of loose parallel between these weird dynamics of there's kind of love, but then they both know they just got to do this. And that's a funny dynamic, like usually when you see kids fighting on the playground, like there's real animosity and there's real like tension and like anger. And they kind of have this sweet little tender moment before they start hitting each other again for the second time in the school hallway and then later. And so I thought that was also some really fascinating mixed dynamics of there's warmth there, but understanding this is what we got to do. This is the rules of the world that we're living in.
Yeah, and I'm watching this and going, guys, we don't have to do this. Like, what are you doing? Like, there's no need for this. I'm trying to be like the voice of logic and reason sitting on my couch in 2025. The other piece of that I thought was really interesting is that AJ doesn't know that his dad is in the mob. And so
yes,
Meadow essentially doing the whole like Santa Claus isn't real thing for her brother, but about their dad in the mob. And so I thought that was really interesting because kids are really smart and they pick up on stuff. And I think we don't give kids enough credit for like how in tune they are to what's going on and how much kids actually do pay attention.
Yeah.
And then to see AJ, who is completely oblivious, was just so shocking to me. But I loved it. And I love that Meadow was ready. She had the website pulled up. She was ready to print out these papers for him so that he can study and learn more about his family. But I think that that's going to be a really interesting thing to explore with AJ. And I love that the episode starts with AJ and Tony having this really fun moment as they're playing the N64 together and all of that. And you can see how like close they are and how well they get along. And then over the course of the episode, AJ learning this about his dad that is kind of reframing how he sees him and how he sees this relationship. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see how that develops, especially given everything that Tony is working through within himself and how much he cares about his family. And how is that going to like wear on his mental health, knowing that his son is distancing himself from Tony. So it's just, once again, we're setting up interesting things to come potentially for these relational dynamics within this really interesting family.
Yeah. Yeah. A really great show, not tell moment from the show to kind of showcase and have us feel what AJ must be feeling and all the complicated emotions with it is him going to bed, turning out the light and staring at the photo of him and his dad having gone on this fishing trip together and almost rethinking and reframing who this person that he's known his whole life is kind of a really a difficult experience when you're so little to be like, I thought I knew this guy, but like, wait a minute, there's this whole other dimension and knowing what he knows about the mob and whatnot and what his dad is capable of is kind of a traumatizing experience. And I think what's really interesting is that we've clearly, as the like viewers of the show are fascinated by who Tony is. And he's an enigma and he's multidimensional and so complex. And seeing AJ go through this experience of having this realization about his father is such a window into what it must have been like for young Tony as a kid to also have that same dawning come over him of like, oh, my dad too. Whoa. I mean, I don't know the whole history, but I would assume that we obviously know that Tony's father is in jail for like serving a life sentence for being part of the mob and was clearly like a prominent figure in some way. And so I would assume that there's potentially some parallels between AJ's complicated relationship with Tony now being a little bit different than he'd expected, and as has been insinuated by the show, this complicated relationship that Tony has with his father as well, and all of the dynamics that are at play there. So it's neat to see that, like, while we're spending so much time with AJ, it feels ultimately purposeful because it feels like a window into a lot of the feelings that shape this protagonist that we're really invested in, but maybe in an indirect way of understanding who Tony is. So that's kind of cool.
And I'm curious to see how Tony's relationship with his father was. I don't know if the show's going to go there, but did Tony try and do things differently with AJ than his dad did with him? You know, that whole, like, when you have kids, you try and do things a little bit better than your parents did, and that whole thing. And so did Tony try and shield his kids more than maybe he was shielded as a kid? Did Tony grow up in the thick of everything? And maybe that's why he's trying to shield his kids from seeing so much of it. So I'm so curious about that. And because that would really inform how you would go about your business as a not just a parent, but as a head in this mob family. So I'm hoping that we get some more glimpses at Tony's backstory and his upbringing, just so that we learn a little bit more about how he's wired.
Yeah. And I'm also curious to see how AJ's going to react too. Like, does he lash out? Does he feel frustrated with this? I felt almost his disappointment when the fight didn't happen, and feeling like, oh, they backed down, but it's only because my dad is really powerful. I didn't get to earn this place for myself and assert this part of myself that I wanted to, and I'm just inheriting it. Like, that feels lame. That feels unsatisfying. Or is he going to relish in it and be like, yo, my dad's a mafia head. Come at me, bro, and where will AJ's kind of emotions go next, and how he feels about this whole thing? It's a big realization. So
lots of good stuff to come.
Lots of good stuff. Any other last big things we wanted to mention before we give out some awards? I've got probably one more point with just related to one character.
Yeah, I just very quickly was thinking while watching this episode, like, how big a deal it was for this show to use this therapy framing device and mental and emotional health to explore the mob. This came out in 1999, so it came out decades ago now, and I don't think that we talked about mental health and emotional health as much as we did then as we do now. We obviously still have a long way to go in, mental health awareness and all of that, and how do we care for ourselves and others and our mental and emotional well-being. But we've come a long way in a couple of decades. And so I was just, while watching this episode, for some reason, I was so struck that this is focused so heavily on things like going to therapy and being aware of your emotions, and the importance of identifying them and regulating them, and the importance of having healthy relationships and healthy boundaries, and there's a lot of good stuff that the show is touching on and covering. And I love that, because it's, I don't know, there's such a stigma around mental health. There's such a stigma around therapy. I think especially with men, who want to be seen as tough guys. Tony even references that in the pilot episode. And so just, I don't know, kind of being in awe of this show to go this route. And I don't know if, people were more willing to go to therapy and stuff after watching something like Sopranos, but it's something that you and I talk a lot about. The media that we consume helps shape how we see the world. And so even something like The Sopranos, normalizing something like going to a therapist, or, talking it out, taking medication when you need it. All of these things are helpful and important things for us to talk about and consider. and it's all in the Sopranos. So I was just, I don't know, I'm
I love
really
that.
struck by that choice. And I think that that's just, it's a very smart framing decision for all of the things that we talked about. But I also just, for the time that this came out,
Yeah.
I think that is a particularly bold choice to make. So I don't know. Shout out to The Sopranos for being kind of emotionally in tune and championing mental health awareness. This is great.
I love that point that you just made, and I think it does showcase what we care about so much and we get so excited by, which is that the media that we consume is entertainment. It's fun. We love to see this mob gang go and do their thing and fight each other and scheme, and that's really fun and entertaining. And yet, underlying, there's all these reshaping and reforming and perspectives around how these maybe practices that are taboo or are unfamiliar are able to be maybe a little bit more normalized and seen as valuable, and seeing Tony have space to wrestle through these things that we also, as the viewers, see that he doesn't have space in his other parts of his world. How does that inform how we might think about that in our own personal lives and stuff? So I love that point that you made. Not The Sopranos casually just advocating for mental health and healthy, therapy practices and whatnot. Like,
Right?
and also not doing it in a way that's preachy or too on the nose. That's actually like for building this character that we're just captivated by and want to know what his inner thoughts are. Yeah, really strategically done.
And I so far, I mean, we're only 4 episodes in, but like so far, Dr. Melfi, I think, is doing a really good job too. So like I think that's the other thing that's kind of surprising to me is that like she actually seems to be a competent therapist. I would have thought that this whole framing, she would actually be not good at her job. But so far, she seems to be doing pretty okay. So I think that's just another layer of this like Sopranos doing some good stuff. So I did not have Sopranos being an like champion and advocate for mental health on my bingo card, but I really love that part of this.
And this complicated relationship that Tony's forming with her too is also going to be really funky to see.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Like there's this place of safety and connection that he's feeling that I think he's confusing with many other things as well, which I think is going to be interesting to see how the show explores that. And he's clearly trying to exert and implement a form of control by feeling maybe vulnerable that he's sharing so much with this person who he knows nothing about. So he's going to change that.
Yes.
My last little shout out / like I think 2 beats in this episode that I think are really interesting is related to Carmela. Really, again, as we were talking about earlier, fascinated by her 2 moments. 1, Carmela seems more concerned with the $40 shirt that AJ's ruined more than the fact that her son is fighting. And so I love that like subversion of how I would have expected her to react. She's like, hey, don't be fighting, like let's not use violence. And instead, with her worldview and the kind of context that she inhabits, that's not her biggest concern. It's the shirt, it's the money, and teaching the value of money more than it is about, hey, let's not use violence as our way to resolve conflict. But the world she inhabits, that's kind of normal. So I think that's an interesting Carmela moment. And the other one that I found fascinating that I hope we get to see more of is this power dynamic between Carmela and Tony, and her kind of threatening Tony with their marriage and perhaps knowing what that would do to Tony's reputation, his place in this world, and kind of playing that card with him. So I swear, every time we record, there's something happening in the background. Do you hear the beeping?
Yes, I do hear the beeping. It's
I don't. Urban life, y'all.
Why does your neighborhood hate The Sopranos? Like, this is very rude that your neighborhood keeps interrupting. I think it's been primarily our Sopranos recordings. It's
the same time for TBNS episodes. I don't know.
They
just have a lot to say. They're excited. They love this iconic show too.
Maybe that's what it is.
Okay, I'm gonna mute now. Let's do some awards. I'm gonna have you share your first one. Most family oriented.
Yeah, so my choice for most family oriented is Meadow, our girl, letting AJ know that their dad is in the mob. You know, gotta look out for your family member, like blood family member, but she's also looking out for the family and wanting to make sure that he knows all about the family that they're actually a part of.
And this whole like cool interactive site with
Yeah,
bells and whistles.
it's so cool.
Yeah, she's just funny. Yeah, she's letting him in on the know. I love the look that she
Mhm.
gives AJ at the end. Like,
It's
see,
so
it's like
good.
classic older sibling. See, I told you so. I was right. My choice for most family oriented is Tony reading the book Elder Care at the strip club.
Yes. It's so good.
How sweet, how tender, wanting to know how to care for his mother while at Silvio's strip club. Okay.
Hey man, you got to do what you got to do.
Gotta get
You
his
had
read
a
when he can.
exactly, you know, you just carry a book with you and, you know, if you can read a couple pages, you just read a couple pages. It's totally
Mm-hmm.
normal.
Yep. Yep. Most explosive moment. What is your choice for this one?
Got to give it to Jackie dying.
Yeah.
I I love how understated that is though. That
Yeah.
Tony finds out via a news broadcast. Like,
Yeah.
and it's such a seismic shift in the organization, but the way that he finds out is so just like downplayed, and just the whole thing, like I would have expected a lot more melodrama in that moment, but it's just
Mm.
this like deeply human sadness, and then they have to all like, you know, console each other, take a shot together, like that whole thing. But I love how that whole thing was done. It was so
Mm-hmm.
unexpected for Tony, but also kind of unexpected for us in the way that it happens.
Yeah. It's a great choice. My pick for this award is actually similar in vein, but it's the few moments afterwards where
Mm,
Christopher shows up and is saying all the right things at the wrong time, and feeling that Tony's about to explode, and he
yeah.
does. And so I loved that moment because you can feel that Tony has big feelings and he doesn't know what to do with them.
Mhm.
And so obviously Chris just like buzzing in his ear is like the last thing that he needs. And he kind of reacts in the way that we would expect, but we don't know how, and we don't know how aggressively. And
Yeah.
that is really funny in that moment too. This is the hero of The Sopranos, that all of the other dudes, Polly, Sylvia, are just like,
Mhm.
Christopher, no. And
Yeah.
you see them trying to be like, Christopher, shut your
Yes.
mouth. And he doesn't listen. But I love the coy ways. They're just like, please don't. Not right
Yeah.
now, my dude. For your own sake,
Yeah.
Jeez.
They were trying to look out for him and he could not take the hint. So,
Yeah.
all right, it is what it is. You
Yeah.
chose this path, my guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, next category. Double meaning dialogue. What's your choice for this one?
Yeah, I want to give it to Junior. In his conversation
Ooh.
with Tony, Tony says, "We need a leader," and Junior's response is, "We do." And obviously, the subtext of that "we do" is "we do," and it's me. So
Yes.
I loved that moment. Just in those
Yeah.
two words, I feel like Junior communicated so much.
That's a great pick. That's a great pick. Oh, so good. My choice for this one is in Carmela and Tony's conversation in the kitchen. She threatens their marriage. He goes, "Is that a threat?" "No, Tony, it's a rave review." I love seeing Carmela hold her own. It's really
So good.
satisfying to me because Tony's invincible in many other ways, but she's got some chips to play.
Yep. So good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, looking ahead, what are you excited to see next as we head into kind of the middle section of this season?
Yeah, yeah. What is going to happen with Junior? You know, what does this family look like with Junior leading, but with Tony still being, the one that's really in charge. And so how is that going to work with Junior almost being like a figurehead and then Tony actually like running things? So I'm very curious about that dynamic in particular. And, like we said before, just wanting to know a little bit more about Carmela and her role in all of this, especially given, her rave review that she gives Tony in this episode. So like, what does that mean, and how is the revelation about Tony's past infidelities, how is that still like working on Carmela in the back of her mind? So I think there's some interesting things going on with her, and yeah, just learning more about this family and what's going on with them, because they got a lot going on.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm fascinated by Carmela, and we don't see any clapbacks from her after the Charmaine incident. She just is left there stunned. I just feel like Carmela's keeping tabs, taking notes, and gonna play her cards at the moment that she feels is most ripe. Very much like Tony in that way, and I'm fascinated to see how much she has in her, and maybe it's more or less than we expect, but she's kind of an enigma in a lot of ways. I feel like the Tony and Junior tensions have more stories to be told on that front. So in this battle, in this match, we can say that Junior is won, but I feel like there's more tensions to be had there, and how they will continue to rub against each other and have friction for their power plays. And so now that Junior has now taken this seat, how is he going to have to exert his power, and how will he be undermined and feeling threatened in that way? So a lot more sensitivities to be had there between those two, which is going to be interesting to see. And in general, Christopher's a loose cannon. I just want to see what he does like every episode, because he's unpredictable, unreliable, and going to be set off in any direction like a fireworks show, and you don't know where he's going to be. So loose cannon. Can't wait to see where he flies off to next. There's a feeling of I'm curious to see in the season in general. There feels like these like chapters that feel like these satisfying like loose threads are tied up before we begin the next like little mini arc. And it feels like episode 1 through 4 has been this satisfying chapter, and I wonder just the pacing and structure of the show if that continues, because there's a whole bunch of loose threads open for the last few episodes, and it feels like a lot of them are tied up for now. And so I think it'll be fascinating seeing that ebb and flow of opening things up and kind of wrapping things for now, and then open things up and wrapping things up, which is different than a lot of shows. I feel like a lot of shows keep the loose threads open the entire way over the course of a season. But this one's kind of got these little mini hubs, these mini arcs. So that's kind of cool to see. We'll see how they continue to play with that idea, if at all. All right. Well, this is our review and discussion of The Sopranos Season 1, Episode 4. You can find it available to stream on HBO Max. Thank you for listening to today's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us as we continue our journey through The Sopranos Season 1. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and a review, letting us know your thoughts about the latest Junior and Tony showdown and how things are at right now. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at tvnspod, or email us at tvnspod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on TV and Us and our other podcast, Movies and Us. We'll be back soon to discuss episode 5, which will land us after that episode nearly at the kind of middle section of the season. So things are heating up. We hope you have an amazing week, and I'll talk again with y'all very soon.